Hey guys, what's up? It is the one and only RJ21 here, and today I'm going to be recapping the two-night premiere of Big Brother Canada Season 12. Now, full disclosure, I initially intended on doing the premiere of just episode 1. However, I failed to realize that Big Brother Canada actually differs from Big Brother US in that the modern format of Big Brother US has only one-night premieres, whereas Big Brother Canada has two-night premieres. So instead of like splitting up the premiere and getting like missing out details, I decided that I'm just gonna wait off. I'm gonna wait until both episodes are released and then I'm gonna recap both episodes because I think that's gonna tell the most complete story until we have to wait for the next episode. So with all that in mind, let's get into recapping this two-night premiere of Big Brother Canada Season 12. The premiere starts off in typical Big Brother Canada fashion with this typical big, over-the-top, overproduced, over dramatized introduction to really set the scene that this season is going to be taking place in the North Hollywood Hills with all the fame and the stardom and the VIP executiveness and all of the glitz, the glam, all of like the quote unquote highlights that are associated with like North Hollywood and being famous and all that stuff. And I really like this theme. When they first released the house photos where they gave previews of some of the rooms in the house, I really liked it. But then seeing how the entire house came together, I loved it. I love the clean gold and white aesthetic that it gives off. I think the entire house really comes together and every room feels united and none of the themes feel necessarily overforced or like overdone. I feel like everything comes together in a really sleek way, and I just love the way the house looks. This is definitely not a house aesthetic that I'm going to get tired of looking at for the duration of the season, because in typical Big Brother Canada fashion, some of these house designs in the past can be a little too much. They might be a little too bright, a little too many lights, but I think that this house has just the right balance of like its sleek design. I think the color aesthetic works really well. I think the theme works really well. It's not done over the top. I think it's just a really good house theme, and I am definitely going to be excited to just be watching the players in this house for the rest of the season. If there is one critique I have, it's that I don't necessarily like the diary room. It does seem a little bit bland. Everything else is like all white and gold and a little bit like prim and proper and a bit royal, whereas the diary room feels a little bit bland, which is weird because there was literally a season of Big Brother Canada, I think it was Big Brother Canada 7, where they literally had a gold chair, and I think that would have fit perfectly for this cast or this season, but they didn't use that, and instead they went with this like bleak gray. I really don't like it, but I digress. Overall, I really like the house, and I think I'm gonna enjoy watching it for the rest of the season. We're then introduced to the cast, and if you watched the cast videos before the season was released, then you're really not going to be missing much. A majority of the content that was used to introduce these players and these house guests was already included in their cast videos, so you're really not missing much. However, there was a change in the cast since I dropped my Big Brother Canada Season 12 cast review. Ibrahim Apaya, the 34-year-old sales engineer from Vancouver, British Columbia, dropped from the cast for currently unknown reasons. Now, this was a bit of a shame to me because I really liked Ibrahim. I thought he could have been interesting no matter which route his character would have taken on the season. He could have fallen into the showman's route, and that could have been interesting, but he also seemed like a pretty competent player, and he seemed like he would have done pretty well within the social dynamics or the context of this house. So I think he would have been pretty interesting either way. So it was definitely a shame to lose him. But his replacement does end up being Tola, a 40-year-old fiber optic technician from Ottawa, Ontario. And from his bio alone, I definitely could tell why he was an alternate. He definitely seemed like the typical happy-go-lucky, oh, I'm just excited to be there and to play the game. He seemed like a fan of the show, but not like a super-duper fan, where like he knows all the ins and outs. He just seems like, oh, he knows the show, he's watched it, he definitely enjoys the show. However, when watching his video, I absolutely love Tola. I love his energy. Even though he is 40 years old and he is a bit on the older side of the cast, he has a very youthful energy to him. It's very like, not necessarily like young and hip, but it's definitely like it's like bouncy, it's like joyous. He has a naturally uplifting energy to him, and I really like that. It's like almost infectious, his energy, and the way he talks about the game, he definitely does seem like more of a fan than what his bio lets off. Still not on like super fan levels as like somebody like a Vivek or like Elijah in terms of like super fandom, but he definitely is a bigger fan of the show than his bio lets off. The one thing about Tola that I was concerned about is how he's gonna gel into this cast. He definitely does seem like a bit of an outlier, not necessarily like in his age, but more so like in his personality. Looking at like the general cast, I just couldn't find that specific individual who I think he's gonna build a final two with. So that definitely did concern me about his game and like his positioning. However, I do think that he does have the maturity, he does have the people skills and the social skills required to connect with other people. So while I do have some concerns about him like in the early game, I think he's gonna be fine, and I think he's going to do well enough to survive and to do decently well on the season. After we're introduced to all of the house guests and they all enter the house guests are told that they're going to begin their first competition of the season and they're getting ready to get geared up. However, before they start their competition, we get introduced to the two mystery all-star house guests that they've been building up to throughout this entire preseason. And the first veteran that we're introduced to is Victoria from Big Brother Canada Season 9. She was the first juror, and I was super excited to see Victoria come back. Big Brother Canada 9 was the first season of Big Brother Canada I watched live, and I absolutely loved Victoria. She was not somebody who I thought was going to be interesting in the preseason. However, on her actual season and the run she had, I thought she was so entertaining. She brought all the drama, she brought all the fights, she brought it all. And she was unapologetically herself, and she played a very bold, a very brash game. And it definitely came back to bite her. I don't think she's the best player in the world. She's definitely entertaining. Like, nobody can say that Victoria or Spicy V was not entertaining. She is definitely a very entertaining character, and I think she's going to continue to bring that entertainment onto this season. However, in terms of her as a player, I definitely have some more red flags. She definitely doesn't know how to hold on to an alliance and stay loyal. She's definitely very flip-floppy. She's a bit of a loose cannon in terms of like just dealing out like information to everybody. She's not a very good player. She's entertaining by all means, but a good player, not really. However, she is coming into this game with a bit more experience. So it is going to be interesting to see how she does play, and hopefully she does improve her strategy. Hopefully she does improve her gameplay, and hopefully she can do better on this season and possibly come out with a win. The second All-Star we're introduced to is Anthony Douglas, the runner-up of Big Brother Canada Season 7. And I was excited to see Anthony come back. He definitely is a really good player. I think he is a top-tier Big Brother Canada player. I don't know about like in the grand scheme of like North American Big Brother, that's definitely up for debate. However, he is definitely a top-tier Big Brother Canada player. I think he's a really good smooth topper. He's a really good smooth talker. He knows how to manipulate people. However, his jury management was absolutely abysmal. That's why he lost unanimously, despite playing such a strong game throughout the entire season. I think coming onto this season, if this cast realizes how big of a threat and how good of a competitor or just player Anthony actually is, then Anthony could probably be in a lot of heat very early on. I definitely could see him struggling to bond with a majority of this cast, considering that a lot of the women on this cast in particular are really pushing for this women empowerment sentiment and really wanting a woman to win this season. And with Anthony's style of gameplay, especially with like the pretty boys and all that, I could definitely see him struggle to fit in with the social dynamic, especially with the women on this cast. He's definitely going to be a big target for them, and they are going to take a shot at him sooner rather than later, and I think that that doesn't necessarily lend well to Anthony's style of gameplay. Do I think he's a better player than Victoria? Based off their first appearance, yes. I think Anthony is a better player than Victoria. Is he going to do better than Victoria on this season? In my estimation, most likely not. Just considering the overall layout of the house, I don't know if he's gonna be just like innately, like inherently. I don't think the makeup of this cast is in his favor, but this is his opportunity to prove that he is a top tier Big Brother player, and I'm honestly really excited to see it. Also, side note, but literally everybody in the preseason guessed that it was going to be Anthony and Victoria. Like, they were propping it up as this, oh, who are these mystery all-stars? And while technically it was a mystery up until like they were revealed on the cast, like everybody pretty much knew it was going to be Anthony and Victoria. I mean, they are obviously both fan favorites and production favorites. They both bring entertainment in different ways. They both have very different styles of gameplay, and I don't think I could have seen anybody else getting asked to be on this season. There were some rumblings that it might have been Gino and JC Lynn from Big Brother Canada Season 10. And while that could have been fun, I think the dynamic between Anthony and Victoria is much more interesting. And I think it's going to play out a lot more, like, it's going to lead to a lot more drama, a lot more fighting, just a lot more entertainment value than what Gino and JC Lynn could have brought. Not trying to speak ill about them whatsoever. I just think the dynamic of Anthony and Victoria and how they're going to play off of each other is going to lend much better for the overall layout of this season in general. After we're introduced to the All-Stars, we are told the twists for this week. First and foremost, both of the All-Stars, both Anthony and Victoria, have safety for all of week 1 no matter what. But that's not where the twist starts. All 12 of the house guests currently in the house waiting to compete in their first competition are not competing for HOH, but rather they're competing for safety, where whoever wins this competition will be safe for the entire week. And they'll be first to pick their entourage, which is the next twist of this week. Only Anthony and Victoria will be competing for HOH, and the other 12 house guests will get to choose to either be on Anthony's entourage or Victoria's entourage. And if the all-star that they pick wins HOH, they will be safe. That entire all-stars team will be safe the entire week, leaving the other all-stars team vulnerable. Now, I think this twist could have been fine, but the fact that the all-stars not only are granted guaranteed immunity for all of week 1, but they're the only 2 people eligible to compete for HOH, I think that's a little bit too much power. And not only that, you're giving them teams. You're giving these All-Stars teams. You're essentially handing these All-Stars allies, like, on a silver platter. And I don't particularly like that. I think it would have been fine giving them, like, safety. I don't have any issue with that. I think it makes sense. If you want your All-Stars to stay around longer, especially with the newbies having this initial, like, oh, if there's veterans, we're going to take them out instantly, like, especially with them having that initial sentiment, it makes sense why you would want to give your All-Stars safety for all of week 1. It makes sense. However, making it so that they're the only ones who have the opportunity of even being in power, that's way too much. It tips the scale way in favor of the All-Stars. It gives them way too much power. I don't like that. It definitely forces the newbies to, like, quote unquote, like, kiss ass, and I don't particularly like that. I feel like the newbies should have more of an opportunity to play for themselves, but now it feels like they have to placate their games in just to appease the All-Stars, and it kind of gets rid of their autonomy in a sense. And I don't really like that. I don't like twists that limit and stagnate the gameplay of certain individuals, especially when it's stagnating them in favor of other house guests. Anyways, back to the safety competition. Essentially, the house guests have to hold onto a rope over their shoulders over a quote-unquote pit of lava and just don't fall in. Periodically throughout the competition, they're going to be going down lower, like, knots on the rope, making it harder to hold on. And if you're the last one standing, you are automatically granted safety for the entire week, no matter which entourage you choose, which does give an incentive for the players to do well. But not only that, the order you fall will determine the order you pick your entourage. Meaning, if you win the competition, you get to pick first. If you finish second, you get to pick second, so on and so forth. So the better you do in this competition, the more likely you are to be able to pick which team you get to be on. I do like that because it does incentivize them to like balance, because people tend to want to throw the first competition of the season to make themselves not appear like a threat. So incentivizing them to do well and potentially show their cards, I do like that. I do like that element of this twist. It does kind of suck for the person, like people who fall early, because like theoretically speaking, like you could come in like seventh in the competition and still not get your first choice of which team you want to be on. Theoretically, obviously that wasn't going to happen, but still, I thought the competition and the structure and how it plays into the entourage twist, I like that. I like that. I liked how it was structured. I do like the impact that it did have on this twist. But back to the competition, people are dropping. Elijah is the first one to fall, and then a bunch of people follow afterwards. And the final two people in the competition are Tola and Lexus. For Tola specifically, talk about like making the most of your opportunity to go from an alternate to top two in the first competition. That's crazy. But unfortunately for Tola, the top two is the highest he's gonna finish, because Lexus ends up winning the first safety competition of the season, guaranteeing her safety for the entirety of week one, and she gets first pick. With Lexus having first pick of which team she wants to join, she decides to join Anthony's team alongside Bailey, Dennis, Donna, Elijah, and Vivek. All of them choosing to go on Anthony's team, while Avery, Janine, Kayla, Matthew, Todd, and Tola all decide to go onto Victoria's team. Essentially, these are the two teams, and if Anthony wins HOH, all of his people are safe. But if Victoria wins HOH, all of her people are going to be safe. We then get some personal content regarding like the overall makeup of the house and how people are interacting and whatnot, and you can really see that the women of this house are really pushing an all women's alliance. Like they really want this to work out. Like they make an alliance, and I put that in air quotes because this typically happens on like almost every season of Big Brother, but they make this initial all women alliance called Big Sisters. And this could be interesting. It could be a really fun alliance if it actually stuck together. Is it gonna stick together? No, because Victoria's in the alliance, and Victoria is loyal to Anthony because they're the only two vets. So including her in the alliance, you knew it was never going to work. Despite how much you want it to work, it was never going to work. But besides that, it's just a lot of like intermingling and like building relationships with one another and just overall talking. And it was interesting. It was interesting seeing how these newbies are trying to play around these veterans. I think it was especially funny seeing how super fans like Vivek and Avery were interacting with these all-stars that they've been looking up to, and how they've been interacting with them. It was really interesting to see how they were talking and trying to talk game and stuff like that, because the approaches that they're having in comparison with Anthony and Victoria is very different. Victoria's a lot more personable. She's really connecting to these people on a one-on-one basis, while Anthony is very game oriented. He's really trying to solidify that, like, yo, this is my second time around. I'm the all-star. I know it's a game. Like, I'm gonna be here to help you type beat. And it's fun. I really like seeing how even though Anthony and Victoria are playing this game together and they are each other's ride or dies, they both have very different approaches to the game, and I think that that's going to be the deciding factor in how well they do, like in terms of like their longevity and how well they do in the long term. And based on these initial house dynamics, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how things play out for them. To end off the two-night premiere of Big Brother Canada 12, we have the first HOH competition of the season, and it's essentially a modified version of Majority Rules, except it's only between Anthony and Victoria. However, we do have Daniel from Big Brother Canada 11, the third place finisher of last season, come back to host this competition, and I was really excited to see him back. Even though I didn't watch Big Brother Canada 11 or like really like keep up with it as much, Daniel was definitely one of the house guests from that season I do remember a lot, and it was just really fun to see him come back to host this competition. Even if it's just hosting, he still had a very fun and infectious energy to him. The way that this competition worked is that Daniel would ask everybody a question, and everybody would then answer which house guest on their team that they think applied them. Whether the question's like, who's the most annoying, who's the most full of themselves, who's going to be the pawn, the perpetual pawn for the entire season. Whoever they thought it was, they would hold it up. And then Anthony and Victoria had to choose which person from their team specifically they thought the majority of their team picked. And if they were right and faster than their opponent, then the loser of that round would have to eliminate one player on their team. Whichever All-Star loses all of their team members first would lose, and the other All-Star would become the first head of household of the season. Now, what's interesting about this comp is that right before it happens, Victoria goes up to Anthony and asks Anthony to throw the competition because she wants to help advance this all-women's alliance and help women, this women empowerment deal. She really wants to enforce this. So she asks Anthony to throw the competition to her so she can target a man. However, Anthony isn't really alongside that because, number one, she waited until the last second in his eyes, and number two, he doesn't want to target a guy. So Anthony does not throw this competition, and Victoria gets mad about it. And the competition does play out pretty interestingly. We see Donna and Tola get absolutely demolished by these questions. And I mean like demolished. Like if I was in their position, my like morale afterwards would be completely shattered. Like it was brutal for them. But at the end of the competition, Anthony comes out on top, with Anthony being the first HOH of the entire season and his entire team being safe for all of week 1, leaving Avery, Janine, Kayla, Matthew, Todd, and Tola vulnerable as the only people who can be nominated this week. Overall, I really enjoyed this premiere. We got a really fun mix of competitions, getting to know these house guests, and seeing them interact with one another, along with them strategizing. We got a really fun mix of everything. I feel like we really got to know each and every one of these characters. Even if a lot of them didn't get like as much screen time as like certain other players, I still feel like we got a really good sense of each of these players and their personalities. And it's going to be really fun to like see how this game plays out. With Anthony being the first HOH, I can definitely predict that a woman is most likely going to be the first person to go home this season, which definitely does suck. But I mean, with Anthony being in power, I just don't expect him to target a man this early on into the game. Not trying to say that like Anthony's some sort of like misogynist or anything. I just think that Anthony is going to try and recreate the Pretty Boys, make it Pretty Boys 2.0, and hopefully run the game that way. At least that's what he's going to hope, based on like how he's like trying to play the game and how he's trying to combat this supposed all women alliance that's forming. He's going to try and combat that by sending a woman home first, which definitely does suck, but with him in power, what are you going to expect? But that's the end of this recap. Tell me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Do you like this cast? Did you like the competitions? What are your thoughts on the twists? That's what I'm most curious about, because I definitely don't like some of these twists, but I'm interested to see what y'all think. So leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends if you have any of those, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.